What's up, you filthy casuals? Welcome to the Casual Shenanigans Gaming Podcast. A podcast all about everything PC gaming. Okay, last week it was a joke. This week I actually did it accidentally.
Hey, it's just the two of us. A podcast about everything PC gaming related.
It is
I'm
tonight,
one of your hosts.
Except I'm going to crap on the PS4 a little bit. Woo! It's just the two of us tonight. Joel is in Disney World right now, signing up for the Gwent beta.
Over and over again.
Yeah, he's had a very connected vacation so far. We've sure heard a lot from Joel because that old Gwent beta. And did the Battlefront DLC come out? Has he been playing that?
No, he doesn't have his PS4 with him, but I've been telling him all about it.
Cool.
Yeah, I feel like Joel has actually like too much connectivity because I sent him a voice message on Skype when I was going for a run last night, talking about the things I was going to do to a LaCroix when I got back, and he then sent me 3 more back. It's like, are you actually on vacation, or are you just like over at your house, like on the couch?
Well, we start the podcast like we always do. We have a Patreon supporter this week, and Joel normally does funny voices for them, but Joel's not here. Or is he? Joel recorded a special video from Disneyland, so hold on one second, and we're going to play that to thank the person who just sponsored us on Patreon.
And that's Patrick, right?
Yes. So I got to mute the stream because Joel sent me a vertical video. I don't know what's up on the second screen. Just want to make sure nothing. Yep, that's definitely some identifying information.
Your bank statement.
And we'll just full screen it, and here it goes.
Hey Patrick, it's Joel. Instead of doing a weird voice today, I thought I'd do something better with the money that you provided for our podcast. And so I spent it all on this. It is a raspberry puree mango rum drink. And so pretty much I'm just gonna drink this. It is so good. Like, it's incredible. Like, and it's incredible because I can actually taste like actual fruit in it, like actual flavor in it, as opposed to beer that has literally no flavor except for tasting like ass. So thanks again for your contribution to this podcast. Every month your money goes towards things like this drink and other fun things, kind of like buying us games and letting us go on adventures and places we've always wanted to go to, but we never had enough money, but now we do. Thank you so much, Patrick, for donating to the podcast. You make our dreams come true. I'm just gonna keep drinking this.
Well, I guess, Patrick, if you feel thanked, then it was all worth it. But now we're going to launch right into the main topic.
What did you decide to call the main topic? Because
why aren't simulation games more fun? Why, or more appropriately,
that is not the title of the podcast.
Why do people like simulators? Why do they like them?
Oh, you titled it "Why Aren't Simulation Games Better?" I thought it said "Why Simulation Games Were Better." I was ready to get fired up here.
No, why aren't they better? Why aren't simulation games better?
I love simulation games.
I love simulation games too. Why aren't they better though? We talked about this before. Let's start with Arma, which is a great jumping on point for, because it's a game that a lot of people got because they wanted to play DayZ, and it's a game a lot of people got because they wanted to play Altis Life, and they didn't necessarily want to do the whole Arma simulation thing. But with Arma, there's a lot of things that are clunky because it's realistic. The movement model is clunky because you can't be running around like you're in Call of Duty, because what you see for your character has to be the thing that other people see and they shoot at, and then the bullets have to be modeled, and it all has to be accurate or it's not a simulator. But that doesn't excuse the terrible scrolling menu system or the key bindings that are seemingly like scattershot across the keyboard, or up until the last couple of years, a UI that was also pretty garbage. Like, that doesn't explain all those things. In the same way, Assetto Corsa, really good driving sim. Decently hardcore driving sim. And its menu is one of the worst things I've ever seen. I've actually quit playing it. Like, I've played it for a couple hours and I stopped because the menu was so garbage. I couldn't figure out what I was doing. And I was like, I just don't have time right now to actually learn what this menu is doing. and I stopped playing it. Terrible menu. Project Cars, also a pretty terrible menu system. It looks really pretty until you try to figure out what to do, and then you're not really sure what to do. So aside from menus, a lot of simulators are just like that. It could be a lot of fun, but then you also have to have like a screenshot printed out above your desk of the 45 keys that you're going to have to somehow remember in order to be able to do basic things. And there's just a bunch of reasons why simulators are clunky. So, I mean, do we need to talk about why people like simulators in general before we talk about why can't they be better?
Yeah, I want to, because
Okay.
I was thinking back to a time when, like, for me, PC gaming was like all the simulators. I had Mario stuff on my consoles and like Rogue Squadron on my GameCube and stuff like that. But on PC, I was playing things like Descent, just a demo still, like 5 years later. I was playing all the SimCity games. I was playing flight simulators and just all the kind of like small audience stuff that it seems like 15, 16 years ago, there was actually a lot more of. And even back then, it seems like I'd say that it was pretty clunky. But it was the kind of stuff that it didn't matter how small the audience was, because I think maybe just in the industry there wasn't that wild amount of money going around, so developers maybe were okay with little small audiences.
Sorry, that sentence just ended abruptly. I wasn't quite ready.
Yeah, my voice was dying there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, basically, I'm saying that I feel like a while back, before games became so expensive to make too, is probably a big part of it.
Makes a big difference.
That it was a lot easier for developers to make weird games that weren't super polished, and that people could be like, oh yeah, here's the what's that one flight simulator, the DCS.
Oh, I don't remember the name, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was the one where it's like, if you got the box copy, it came with like the college hardbound binder with the instruction manual. It's like, open to page 460 to begin engine startup procedures. And it's like, I think you just saw a lot more of that stuff back when, again, games maybe weren't making quite as much money, and they weren't nearly as expensive to make either. Mm-hmm. But I've always just had an attraction to that kind of unique experience in games.
I mean, I could see the attraction, especially with car simulators. Like, I've played enough car simulators, and you get used to, like, I don't really believe all the marketing hype. Like, we're calculating the exact angle at which the tire rolls over and all these things. I'm sure they've done that. But when you're playing it, like, you can't feel all the granular detail they've put into this stuff. Same thing with Arma. When you shoot a gun, I mean, you can't really feel them simulating, like, the humidity in the air or whatever else they simulate. You could just notice that there's some wind, so it pulls to the side a little bit, and there's some bullet drop, and there's a bit of a delay. Like, you learn stuff like that, but I think in most simulators, people don't really appreciate the granular detail. But I've played enough car simulators, and that's probably the biggest sim genre I play in, that cars in regular games are actually hard for me to drive now. One of the reasons you remember, I was very critical of the cars in Battlefield Hardline. And I was
playing, you should have been.
Uncharted 4 this week, and driving that Jeep is not fun. The reason is, on more casual racing games like Need for Speed, and on games that aren't racing games but have cars in them, the cars rotate around a central axis, and you can see this very easily in a game like Uncharted. When you turn, the vehicle is turning while the wheels are animating to the side and everything else, but there's no actual weight transfer going on. They're just faking it. And of course, it's a game. Everything's faked anyway, but they're not simulating the actual weight transfer of four wheels being on the ground. They all have grip. They have different amounts of grip depending on where the weight is going, depending on how you're braking, accelerating, everything like that. And so once you get used to all that, and I've drive in the real world, I've done only 2 autocrosses, but you actually get to implement stuff in there that I've only ever been able to do in a simulator, but I actually knew what to look for because I played simulators. You can like feel the tires loading up and starting to break loose, and you can do stuff like trail brake to bring the tail back out a little bit. Like, there's all this granular like management you can do of the car while you're driving, and you can do that in a sim game. When I drive another game, it just feels like you're just slinging like a ping pong ball back and forth.
You might have just ruined driving in most games for me. Thanks.
Well, because I know what I'm looking for.
Now I
trying
know what to look
anticipate
for
that.
too. No.
And I'm actually surprised for a casual game. GTA does an excellent job of faking a lot of that because you could actually drive that like a regular car, and it works mostly like it. I don't know if they're using single axis or 4-axis. I know they're not. I know they're not simulating it because the frame rate's too good. But I don't know how they're doing it. But however they faked it, it's really good. But for that same reason. But a lot of car sims, the UIs are garbage and everything, and starting the car is a pain in the butt. And like on a real car, I think this is one of the reasons they aren't fun. On a real car, you have switches for your headlights and everything you need to adjust. There's switches and things on the dashboard. On a keyboard, you have to translate all that to a keyboard.
Yep.
And I was playing Project Cars, and I just got my racing wheel, and I had a moment where I spun out and the car was off, and I couldn't figure out how to start it. And I kept trying to start it and I couldn't do it. And then I realized, I actually had to hold the clutch down and start the car and then let the clutch out to get rolling. Like I wasn't expecting to have to do that. But in a car, you have all those controls and you just learn where all the controls are. But on a computer, they are all just keys on a keyboard and you have to learn how to do it that way. And I think that might be a reason why simulators struggle to be accessible. When you're holding a gun, flicking the safety on and or off, or adjusting the sighting or whatever else, adjusting your stance is easy as just moving. Your whole body works together. But when you're doing a mouse and keyboard or a controller, you have to like hit keys to do each of those little things, and it just takes so much longer.
It's a great example. There's actually a mod I've seen groups use for Arma 3 that literally just adds a functioning safety to all the guns, which if you're like all about realism, it might sound cool on paper, like, oh, you gotta flick the safety off. But like you just said, what that translates to is another keyboard command to get in your way to have to remember. And I think there's a point of diminishing returns where stuff isn't adding to the realism or the simness, it's just in the way.
And actually, I think Arma is... The biggest thing I think that hurts Arma's accessibility is that. Because we were talking about this the other night. Good example, Uncharted. You get into this busy city scene, you're running around this like outdoor market area. There are like 6 or 7 AI that aren't really AI. They're just doing pre-programmed things, but they're walking around. Everybody else is basically a cardboard cutout that just can move and do small little animations. And that's the only way they exist in the game. But the overall presentation looks like a bustling marketplace. Well, in Arma, you can't just place a civilian into the world. You place it in, and the AI is like, what's his backstory? What are his motivations? Is he hungry?
Does he need to be able to pilot a drone? Because he can do that too.
Can he walk up hills? Is he scared of the gunshots? And it's not like all that simulation really makes the player's experience that much better. Like, because most of the time, the people in Arma are just running around like chickens with their heads cut off, or they're like all doing weird things where they all like in that one mission grouped together in one spot in this open air market and just didn't move and were just staring at us. Stuff like that's a little creepy.
That one guy where the VCOM AI like stopped halfway through the script, and that one guy just stood at the base of the palm tree and stared up at the top for like 10 minutes.
But yeah, so like no matter what they're calculating, like does any of that actually make the game better? Because most of the time you don't feel like it's that smart. So all the different stuff they're simulating, is that making it better than, say, the dumb AI in GTA 5 where you shoot them and they run away? Like, that's it.
Yeah, there's got to be a balance. Again, I think the same with the control stuff. I think a lot of the stuff that Arma's civilians can do on paper would be cool if it always functioned like it should, but because it's so complex, it's just more ways for it to go wrong, too. It would be cool if for certain scenarios there was just an option where you could have a civilian AI that was literally just a backdrop. They can die, they can move around, that's it. And that's where, they're left alone. Those are the kind of systems that I think would make the game better. Then you have other shortcuts, though, where developers have tried that kind of thing. Compared the city simulation in City Skylines to SimCity, where for SimCity, they tried to kind of cut corners with the simulation. So you look at City Skylines, and it's like, do you really need to be calculating like the water volume so exactly and people going to and from their jobs so exactly? Like, that's cool. Isn't that just like being a sim for the sake of being a sim? Mm-hmm. Well, SimCity cut corners, which meant that after a certain size, everything would start breaking down and breaking down exponentially. So I think there is some value in taking things to that sim level, depending on...
But really, that could have been fixed, just the more careful development. I don't think that's the Sims' fault. That's them not providing an allowance for a hard limit they put into their own system.
A big part of the limited size in SimCity was because bigger than that, the simulation would break faster because they were rounding too many things off, and it just got out of control, basically. And even now in SimCity retail version, you can launch it and play it for long enough that your city just breaks inevitably.
There's other things that make Sims not fun, like the scroll menu that we've made fun of for so long in Arma and DayZ. They're finally phasing that out, and a lot of things you can interact with by using like the F key. Like a little icon pops up and you push an interact key, which is something games have had figured out for so long. You think, just why? Why did it take this long? And the reason, I think, is a lot of Sims are built on very old engines, and it takes a long time. As we've seen with DayZ, a simulation engine can't just be retrofitted to do something else, apparently. We're not game developers, but apparently that is a big deal.
I actually just read an article from Brian Hicks talking about the Infusion engine, in progress engine update for DayZ. And he was talking about when him and Dean Hall first sat down and said, we just sold over 1 million copies. Let's do it. Let's build a new engine. Let's make this the game we always wanted it to be. And he's like, we started tearing things out of the engine, and we're looking up like 15 and 16-year-old code that hasn't been touched in that amount of time. And he's like, what have we gotten ourselves into? Like, this is archaic stuff that we're having to change.
And that's when you go, wait, should we even use this engine? Or should we see what's up with Unreal Engine 2.5? But, I mean, are there any simulation games that really just knock it out of the park? They're so good. They're fun to play. They're easily accessible. Anybody can understand the basics, and it takes a long time to master them. Like, are there any like that?
None of them are perfect, I think. And I think the reason I brought up money early on in the discussion was because I think it is a big part of, now that the gaming industry costs so much money to make a modern game, and that games have the potential to make so much money, it's a lot harder to get a development team and a publisher on board with making these very small, narrow marketed games that are complex and aren't going to be mass market appeal. But I think there are still some developers making those kind of games. You just don't hear about them as much. One that took off, I just already talked about it, City Skylines. It's a great example, I think. It's accessible, but it also has the potential to be pretty deep. It's not super deep.
But that's also, when it comes to Sims,
complex.
though, I think city builders are also a little bit lighter. Like, it's not like Cities in Motion or one of the really archaically
that is
UI
true.
ones.
That is true.
But it is super deep, but they give you a really good UI where they're like, oh, there's a problem with your city. We'll toggle through all these layers and you can see where your traffic's backing up or your sewage is backing up. Like, they give you a lot of information that helps you solve that problem. Whereas, like, in Total War, I don't know if that's not a sim really at all, but it has a lot of those same bones to it.
Strategy games can be applied in this discussion quite a bit.
Right.
I think, yeah.
But, like, if there's a problem of, like, if my people are unhappy, you can spend hours trying to figure out why. Like, tell me. I will listen. Tell me what's wrong. And really, they're just saying, like, but there's famine because there's the this and there's the that. And you can Google it and kind of figure out what stuff you can do to make things better. But in City Skylines, you can actually figure it out because they give you the tools. They don't give you the answer, but they give you the tools. And I've spent hours in City Skylines, like, fine-tuning my road system. Like, I've gotten rid of some bottlenecks, like, gotten my traffic flowing really, really smoothly. And that's actually the number one thing you look on the City Skylines subreddit, at least for a couple months, was people designing these incredibly ornate road systems that would never get built in the real world because money and space are a concern. But, like, they have a ridiculous amount of traffic flowing so smoothly through them. I think it's a great example of a game that has the depth, but anybody could hop into it and have fun in a few minutes without feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Stone brought up a good one, Squad. Squad, I've described before as the best blend of Battlefield and Arma.
Yeah.
Doesn't have all the depth of Arma. It doesn't have all the cool things Arma can do. But
Well, it's not co-op either. It's
Right.
PvP. It's multiplayer.
Right. And it feels like you're kind of playing Battlefield, except you have to walk for way too long because the maps are too large.
Only if your squad leader is not good at his job,
Oh my gosh.
which is frequently.
I'm sorry.
I wasn't referring to just you, but yeah, you were in there too.
Our perfect flanking maneuver would have worked if the other 3 squads would have taken 1 point.
Honestly, I was angry that that failed because that would have been
It would have
awesome.
been perfect. It would have been so good. I think Squad's a good example.
Of one that works. I had an example of one that I want to play with you sometime soon that I think comes so close, but still, has some of those archaic, non-user-friendly decisions along the way. Cossacks 3 I've been playing.
Is it co-op or just multiplayer?
I think it's just multiplayer. I think we should look into it. It's really cool. It really reminds me of Age of Empires 2. It like the art style, the style, everything, except for it feels like they missed the boat on a couple of like 2002 design decisions, like the ability to speed time up when you're waiting for things to build and mine. And when you tab out of the game, time pauses until you come back. So you're literally just watching things build at normal speed. I put about 2 hours into Cossacks, and I want to put in more time. But in those 2 hours, I fought like 2 tiny little skirmishes because it takes so long to do anything. I'm like, please, just add a fast forward button. It's single player, please. But other than that, like, it's a really great game. But man, it just seems like they kind of missed the mark on just a couple of the user experience things.
I think Forza is another game that is extremely accessible, if for no other reason than they've taken a racing sim, and it's sim light. I know, everybody in the comment section, I understand it's not iRacing, but they've taken a pretty sim-like game. It's more sim than I have talent. And they've been able to pump one out every year. There have been 4 Forza games with the new release of Forza Horizon 3, 4 Forza games on the Xbox One, and there have been 0 Gran Turismo games on the PlayStation 4, because they're agonizing over getting it perfect. It has to be perfect. It has to be right. And with Forza, you can hop in and just drive around on vacation. We were just hopping in and making stupid cars and like driving around the track and having fun.
Yeah.
And you can do that and just horse around. Like, it has that Grand Theft Auto style. Let's just do something stupid with a car. And then if you want to get really serious about it, you can get really serious about it. And I don't know. I think it's really, really good. I think they've done a commendable job of having the depth and also making it accessible to everybody. But driving sims are also a little bit easier because if you can play on a controller, like, you can skip a lot of the advanced stuff, turn on automatic transmissions, turn on traction control, turn on a lot of things and just drive.
Yeah.
But that is resilient.
I thought you were just like praising something else. Like, you're just like, oh, this topic is just... So yeah, so where are we going with this? We've got some good roundabout points, but
well, the main question was why aren't they better? And we can see with some of them, like with Arma, it's obvious. It started out like par for the course for an early 2000s simulator game, and over time they've slowly been making it better. But they really only started getting money in the last 5 years. So
last 3-4 years, yeah. It's one of those things.
Fly. He flew into my mouth.
Did you say you swallowed the fly?
Yeah, he flew into my mouth.
Well, if you didn't talk so loud. Yeah, okay, so Arma, let's talk about that again for a minute. Operation Flashpoint was revolutionary when it came out. Arma 2 was pretty mind-blowing too. Arma 3 was, this game barely launched because we were almost broke. I think they're on the right track with the Infusion engine. It sucks that DayZ's having to be the one to push it through because it hurts. It's a painful process. But I have seen through Arma 3's lifecycle a willingness for Bohemia to learn from their mistakes, listen to the community, and to also say when certain things come down the pipe that they can't fix, like, sorry guys, this won't be fixed in Arma 3, but we know it's a problem. One example is, like, when you go from the, you're on foot, right? You have the nice ground textures in the grass and all. You go up to a helicopter, it loads in those satellite textures, which look pretty crappy, a little bit too fast, like kind of low res. They looked at trying to do like a mid-level texture, but because the way that their terrain system works right now with using satellite imagery for the overall texture, it's just not possible in this version of the engine to make that look better. It's just not possible. Like, it would be a huge amount of overhauling. Which is why, looking at what Bohemia has done with Arma 3, which again was in a rough spot in alpha and beta. Like, the development team was small, they were running out of money. It's a miracle that it launched. And how they've supported it as the money started to come in and the game got some popularity. I am super excited for Arma 4. I hope it's not for like 6 years. I want Infusion to come out and get solidified. DayZ can be the guinea pig. But I think we might see some revolutionary stuff in Arma 4. It's still going to have wonk. It's still going to have that that 10-15% simulator wonk, but hopefully it won't be 25%, 30% simulator wonk anymore.
One thing I'd really like to see them do, though, is they really need to start taking optimization seriously. Because a simulator is great, but when it actively hurts the player base and their involvement, I think it's bad. Like Tanoa, their new beautiful, gorgeous map. Absolutely gorgeous. One of the best game worlds, like one of the best game maps ever played on as far
It looks
as
so authentic. It looks like someone's tourist photos of the region. Yeah.
Right. But it runs unacceptably bad. And we have some beefy computers. Like there aren't, not to put ourselves on a pedestal, but at least CPU-wise, there aren't many computers you can make that would be significantly faster than ours in an ARMA-like scenario, and we routinely get in the low 20s on Tanoa in a multiplayer environment. Like, that's just unacceptably bad. It's bad when I have to resign myself to 30 FPS in a game because it's literally impossible to get a steady 60 no matter what you do. Like, that, it's bad, and it's something they need to do better at. But you know, they're getting better. It has gotten better. It's gotten so much better since 2013 when the alpha launched. I mean, the game is miles better.
Yeah, and not to excuse like how it was at launch because it was rough, and we weren't playing a whole bunch around when Arma 3 actually launched. But you remember how bad the desync was when it first launched? Like it was red chain constantly. Like the game was just struggling to keep things synchronized.
Now another type of games. It's something worth talking about. Why aren't simulation games better? Money and the player base is a pretty important thing. We talked about a lot of games don't get money. They don't get enough money to like really polish out a lot of those things. And then other games decide they actually want to make money because they have publishers who we talk a lot of bad stuff about publishers, but publishers, I mean, they have a job to do, and the job is not to publish games that lose money and are bad. They need to publish games that make money, especially so they can float other projects that are less profitable. So you've got games like Battlefront and Battlefield, which have become, they weren't ever Sims, but they had a lot more stuff going on, and a lot of those systems get stripped out, and a lot of that depth gets stripped out in favor of accessibility, which is why a lot of people were very critical of the new Battlefront. Besides not having a ton of content, it didn't have many of the things, it didn't have a lot of like the game modes and gameplay mechanics that were in the two previous Battlefront games that people loved. It felt like a port of Battlefield into the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
And Battlefield 1 is also getting a lot of the same complaints, that they've changed the way Conquest works, and they've changed the way they do map design, and there's the commander mode, which admittedly they brought back in Battlefield 4, but they'd already like torched the community enough that commander mode was a mistake at that point. But like things like commander mode and the airdrops and airstrikes and all kinds of things that were integral to gameplay in Battlefield 2, they slowly strip them out over time in favor of a more straightforward shooter experience. And then you have maps where it's 64 people just shooting each other. Like people aren't actually playing different roles, and they can't step back on the player count because then people would throw a huge fit if they did that. But it's not good. You know, not that the game is bad, but there's a lot of things that the game used to be that it no longer can be anymore because they would alienate all the new fans they've gotten. And you can't really look at the developer and go, well, you need to alienate all those fans because I want my hardcore features back. Mm-hmm. Like that's not fair. You know, they deserve to have their work seen by a lot of people. They deserve to try to make as much money as they can. There's nothing wrong with that.
Because just look at the numbers, okay? Bohemia celebrated the fact that Arma 3 has sold, I think it was it 2.5 million copies now? I think it was.
Oh, I don't know. That's really good, though.
It was well over 2 billion. I think 2.5 million, which was unheard of. Like Arma 2 sales before DayZ were like 240,000. Like it's an unbelievable amount of sales for a simulator. Even with tons of options and different game modes and mods and all that stuff, that's nuts. But Battlefront, as of May, has sold over 14 million copies. And it's really hard to argue with a gigantic pile of money.
Yeah, and they're not bad people for wanting to keep some of that giant pile of money. Like that's
because Battlefront is not a bad game. I play Arma and I play Battlefront on a console, and I love it. It is so much fun. I wouldn't mind a more hardcore classic Battlefront, but I can definitely appreciate the one that's right in front of me, and I can understand why it is the way it is.
And in the same way, I can appreciate stupid, dumb racing games and the really high-end simulators, although you do draw the line at some things like Need for Speed 2015, where the handling model is so egregiously bad, like it's actually harder to drive the car if you actually know how cars work. Same thing with Battlefield Hardline. Like occasionally they can go so far in the other direction. It's like you could have just given us a golf cart and it would have been better than this.
The driving in that game was like someone had outlined a system as a placeholder and then forgotten to replace it in alpha, beta, second beta, final beta, and then launch. It just stayed there the whole time.
On the same note, Arma 3's vehicle system is garbage too. Their driving system is absolute garbage. Like,
you need to go back and play Arma 2's and remember how bad that was.
I remember it's bad, but like I don't get what's a hard concept. When you put on the brakes, cars don't just coast for hundreds of yards. Like I don't understand.
It's actually Arma 3 uses an NVIDIA rigging system for vehicles. It's like a plug-in.
What other games is that plug-in in?
Let me look it up real quick. I'm curious.
Because I've never driven the car in another game and thought, wow, this is as bad as Arma.
And it really is funny how different the vanilla vehicles are on vanilla terrains. Like, it has to be the perfect setup. But, like, the new vehicles in the Apex expansion pack feel pretty good. Now, not GTA 5 good, but the best that Arma's ever had. Let me see if I can find the name of all these Reddit threads. Horrible vehicle physics. Driving is a nightmare. Let's see. Let me just go for NVIDIA. NVIDIA vehicle. Oh, it's PhysX.
Oh, it is PhysX. That's why the frame rates are so bad.
Yeah, because I remember, I think it was last summer, there was some kind of update for NVIDIA PhysX that, like, for one game update wrecked Arma's vehicle physics, and they had to, like, hotfix it because they had changed the plugin.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my. Yeah, this looks like the kind of system, I'll paste it in chat, that Bohemia would pick for Arma. Yeah, it's quite complicated. Car works.
Oh, that chat. Okay, I was looking through all our different chats, just waiting for it to drop.
I dropped it in the public chat there. Everybody can see.
Yeah, I don't know what any of that means. All right.
Like, there's suspension, there's mass.
Yeah, see, that's the thing that I don't like that Sims do, and Arma is a bad offender. You can calculate tire friction on drivable surfaces. You can calculate, what are some of the other headers? Just the wheels, the tires, the center of gravity, all that stuff. What does that actually mean for the player? It means nothing. It means it feels like you're driving a bowling ball on a pogo stick connected to a roller skate.
It's one of those things where, like, it really should be about priorities. I do think that the ballistic simulation is really important for Arma. That should never go away. But why couldn't they just throw in a super faked vehicle rig? And I know tanks wouldn't feel quite as weighty, and cars maybe would be a little bit too bouncy, like that Jeep in Battlefield 1's beta. But, you know, infantry are the important stuff in Arma. Maybe don't worry too much about the cars and just make them fun. Maybe get some frame rates back.
Do that with the civilians too. But yeah, let us know in the comments, what simulation games do you think are really good, like shining examples of it can be easily accessible and have the depth there if you want it, and what games, and we say simulation, but we're also including things like real-time strategy games.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And UA makes a good point in chat, which we definitely agree with. We just haven't said clearly. He says, you need to do all those things even in arcade games. Physics in games are way more complicated than you realize. Yes, absolutely. We understand. But there reaches a point where you are simulating way past, we need a system that works, which is what every game has to have, is we need a car system that lets you drive, and we need a movement system that lets you move. But every game fakes things, like very famously in Fallout 3, the train was a person running with, the train was a hat that sat on their head and the person ran underneath the ground. Like, developers fake things in games because the end product is what's more important than how you get there. And sometimes that means there's really clever solutions like the hat train. And sometimes that means there's really, really broken things. But then there's some simulators where they go, no, we're going to do it for real. Like, no matter what it is, we're going to do it for real.
Yeah.
And then it just saps performance, and it, like, they go to such depths or lengths or heights, depending on what it is. And maybe it's super realistic, but at the expense of fun.
Yeah, I think I have a good example too. Like, I still love DayZ. I still have hope for DayZ, etc.
You're saying it with more sarcasm these days.
Yeah,
though.
I just throw it out there. There it is. DayZ's vehicle system. I understand when you're rebuilding things. In the case of DayZ, the vehicle module, right? Like, they want to have new vehicle physics and interaction, all that stuff. You need to plan ahead and put the framework for all the features that you want for that system, right? Like, if you're gonna redo a system, don't build just the foundation. Like, framework the whole thing and then go from there. Their location-based damage is unnecessary. The ability to, like, knock off parts of doors and stuff, it's really cool. And I think if it all works well, it could be an awesome addition to the game. If we could just get vehicles to stop flipping over first, that'd be great. And again, I realize because it's a new module and a framework, it might just be one of those things you got to fight through. The framework has to all be there before you start refining it. And that could be 100% be the case. Maybe we don't worry about location damage at all then. Just rip that part out so you can get to just good vehicles faster. Just one of those things to think about. And making a game is... a developer tweeted a few days ago, he's like, they're trying to get a family dinner of like 300 people to all agree on the same thing and then work together towards the same goal. And it's just a huge, complicated endeavor with all the usual technical issues along the way, plus just getting people to work together. And you know, nothing is ever as simple as we're describing it, but it's just some things to think about.
So let us know what you guys think. Write into casualshenanigans@gmail.com or leave us a comment below. And we are very curious to hear what you guys think about Shining Examples, because we talk a lot about Cars and Arma because those are the games respectively that we've spent a lot of time in. But there's probably simulators out there for all kinds of things. Like maybe we've been wrong this whole time and Farming Simulator is like super deep and they're calculating your rainfall and like not just the rainfall, but the type of soil you have and how the water filters down to it. And maybe it isn't just driving around in a field with a combine doing stupid stuff and putting it on YouTube. Who knows?
And then at the end of the day, like I said, I love games like Battlefront, even as casualized as it is. But at the same time, I still love Arma. I still love City Builders. Even SimCity, I had a lot of fun in that. Even with the wonk, that 10, 20, 30% wonk, depending on the game, these are still definitely some of my favorite kinds of games for sure.
It's now time for the news.
It's news time.
All right.
There's no song.
Up first, Gears of War 4 is going to be one of the Xbox Play Anywhere games coming out this fall. And Microsoft, like, I am continually being impressed and surprised by the Xbox Play Anywhere program, which technically just launched this last week, but we've been hearing about it for a few months. Gears of War 4's campaign will have split-screen co-op on the PC and LAN support.
But Jeremiah,
LAN support in 2016.
People don't do that anymore. It's just not possible.
Somebody brought up a good point online. They're like, what if you have one of those 21:9 monitors? You could do co-op with like 2 4:3 screens pretty much side by side. Like, that would be super sweet. That's a really good idea.
That sounds awesome.
It does sound awesome. Like, that's pretty cool. Now, it is going to be about an 80 gigabyte download. I feel like we stopped around 40 to 50 gigs for a while, but there's a lot of games coming out this fall that have...
It's just 40 gigabyte per player.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it just mirrors it. That's not how that works. That's...
But yeah, it's pretty sweet.
That's unheard of. That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm so impressed by that. Dave, what do you have for us?
Valve has banned a developer from Steam after it literally sued Valve's customers, over bad Steam reviews. And we might be next in the list because we're going to talk about the developer. This is apparently the same developer that has sued YouTube reviewer Jim Sterling. There's actually a lawsuit in progress still because of the YouTube videos he would do reviewing their games for a couple years in a row. Because apparently they're all really bad and kind of shovelware. So go figure, the user reviews are quite bad on their games too. Now, to be as fair as possible to the developer, they got some of your usual, like, worst of the bunch internet comments on their games. stuff like, your wife is a whore. I hope you die in a fiery car crash. These are actually quotes. Very nice for Steam reviews. The developer claims he actually got a pile of dog feces in the mail, which is a little concerning. At the same time, though, it's the internet. You cannot censor the internet. The internet will find its way around it. And if you're getting hate mail and death threats, maybe don't make terrible products and then go after the consumers who are reviewing them. I'm not excusing the reviews at all. Don't get me wrong. But I think it's pretty clear from what I've seen from the Jim Sterling videos and stuff like that these games are really bad. Like
and that's the problem with doing stuff like that on the internet is they're just locusts. Like they'll just swarm to it because it looks like it's bleeding.
Yeah,
but
that's
as soon
true
as they start
too.
firing back, nobody's ever gonna apologize, say they're sorry. Like there's never gonna be any satisfactory resolution to it. They're just gonna scatter. Actually happened on Reddit just the other day. A guy was dumping on a Potato Masher video. He was apparently brand new to the PC Master Race subreddit, so he was behind the times on a lot of things and was just critiquing the whole, it's literally impossible. I can get a used Xbox One for $200, you piece of crap, you blah, blah, blah. And eventually came down to, it's literally impossible to build a $200 PC. And he was like just bandwagoning, trying to like, everybody agrees with me, right? And most people didn't care. Because it's the internet again.
Yeah.
But he was just going on and on and on. So I tagged a guy I know, Ofa, who has a YouTube channel where he specifically buys used parts and builds gaming rigs. Like that's his whole deal. He has a $50 gaming computer that's actually halfway decent. And obviously used parts. And I tagged him. I was like, I'm pretty sure I could do it. But he does it all the time. So tag, you're in. And then the guy Ofa showed up and said, hey, all right, we're doing this. I see there's been a challenge. Like, he basically said, what are your demands and when would you like your ass handed to you? Pretty much showing like it's a put up or shut up. So the guy made a bunch of ridiculous off the wall demands that like are in no way logical. And, but he still did it. Ofa still did it. And then the guy just stopped replying, just disappeared.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, just like, oh, no apology, no acknowledgement, no nothing, just moved on.
Never.
Right. So that's like the best thing you can do is just not engage. But of course you can be criticized for that too, because Sean Murray's getting a lot of hate right now. Even PC Gamer wrote an article, Hello Games needs to start talking again, because since the day No Man's Sky launched, he has not tweeted from his official Twitter account, which is at No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
They have gone completely silent ever since then, because they could be firing back. They could be threatening to sue people. They could be like writing op-ed pieces on Medium. They could be doing a lot of things and they're not doing them, which I guess was good. But they also haven't said anything, which lets people connect all those dots themselves. So there's got to be like a nice middle ground. But here's an interesting thought. Be honest and communicate with fans. Like communicate with your customers. Be honest to a fault. And they should at least respect you. Most of the time, they'll at least respect you, even if they think you're making bad stuff.
Yeah. And that's my last point, too, is that this developer apparently has a terrible reputation and I think is a little bit like predatory, like he's taking advantage of the marketplace to take people's money with crappy products. And suing reviewers is always a terrible idea. He does have a actual point though, and that's that the Steam review system is still like the Wild West. It's still not super useful. It's full of spam, dumb jokes. It's full of sponsored reviews that aren't disclosed. It's full of negative reviews because the developer said something on Twitter that's unrelated to the game. Steam does not do a good job of curating the reviews, and they've made changes recently that have helped a little bit maybe, but still, it's just, the system is not great, for sure.
Speaking of things that aren't great, this is something that maybe is kind of great. Dave, what happened with some YouTubers and a gambling site?
The first YouTubers have officially been charged with a crime over the whole video game Counter-Strike skin gambling fiasco.
And it's not T. Martin or Syndicate, unfortunately.
I've never heard of these people, but Nepenthes and Fut Galaxy, two prominent YouTube stars, according to Ars Technica, have appeared in court over charges under the UK Gambling Act. This should be, though, the first prosecution based around Counter-Strike gambling skins. It's the first time. They've been charged with promoting a lottery, advertising unlawful gambling, and Douglas, who is Nepenthes, has also been charged with inviting children to gamble, which is a think of the children law if I ever heard one, but probably a good one in this case.
The children law?
No, the classic think of the children law.
Gotcha.
Like,
okay.
why wouldn't you support XYZ? Why won't you think of the children?
But when it comes to gambling online, maybe yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to like popular YouTubers that your kids watch for 3 hours a day, hey Johnny, here's this cool website I stumbled across accidentally. I totally don't own the shares in it. But the Gambling Commission in the UK just released a paper recently on virtual currencies, esports, and social gambling. So they appear to be actually somewhat on the ball.
Nice.
I mean, this thing is only a couple years old, so that's pretty impressive for a government agency, with the first 2 YouTubers in court officially in the UK over it.
Up next, Dave. Battlefield 1 had a great beta.
It did.
But they're going to change some stuff. And fortunately, a lot of it is stuff that we thought they should change and not inexplicable things. So,
yes.
Walk us through, what are some of the major changes coming to Battlefield 1 after the beta?
As much as I loved my invisible horse tanks, they are nerfing the horse's health, so you won't be able to just like do a circle and just run over an entire squad anymore. I'm sure they're still going to be fun, but they were just super overpowered. The light tank is obviously getting a nerf. It'll be interesting to see where they go with that, because I think it's overpowered, but it could be very easy to make it not fun either. Like, it's got
I think the other thing they're going to do could fix that. They said, and we realized that people need to be able to get anti-tank weapons sooner than like a couple hours in. Which I think that was the real problem. Is not that the tank was so strong, but there was nothing you could do except run away.
It was a glitch early on with the unlocks, where like for the first half of the beta, it was like 5 days, the unlocks weren't working. Like, so for the assault class, you just had nothing to use for it. What else we got? Apparently generic changes coming to Rush. I hope it's just to remove most of the vehicles, like 3/4 of the
Rush.
vehicles.
Remove Rush.
No, I love Rush, but Rush is like it's, what is it, 28 players, right?
I don't know.
It's either 28 or 32, I forget which. Maybe that's consoles. But yeah, it's a smaller mode. You don't need 3 to 4 tanks per side. It's a beta, I know, you're trying things out. Don't try that. Also, Conquest is getting some changes. It's unfortunately not going back to 100% classic Conquest, where it's the ticket bleed system, but they are going to make kills count towards the score and not just captures. So if your team is absolutely dominating the battlefield, you won't still lose to that one squad of 5 on the enemy team who's just circling the map, capturing points. The fact that was even a strategy to win a game, even if they were losing by everything else, was kind of silly. So kills are going to matter in Conquest, but it's still not quite the traditional ticket system. It's an okay middle ground. I really wish they would just stop messing with Conquest. There's like 7 other modes in the game you can try things with.
It's our Conquest. Leave it alone.
You can get off my lawn.
Yeah. Up next. So, HDR was a big component of the PS4 Pro reveal, and Sony kind of stole one of the main reasons why they want to sell the PS4 Pro to existing PS4 owners by saying that all PS4s were going to get an HDR update, which is good. That is an awesome thing that they're able to add a cool new feature into all existing models with a software update. Well, here's the problem. Apparently a lot of developers didn't even know that was happening, so they're not ready for it, because you can't just patch the game for that. Like, you actually have to do some work. But here is the problem. A lot of, like, as far as I know, there are no 1080p HDR televisions. It's all 4K. Most 4K televisions do not switch on HDR unless you are outputting a 4K image. The PS4 cannot output the 4K image, only the HDR signal. So there's that all has to get kind of worked out. So far, the only game I've seen that's confirmed they're working on a PS4 HDR patch is The Witness.
What is The Witness? I don't even recognize
puzzle
it.
game by Jonathan Blow.
Okay.
The Braid guy.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, for example, Ars Technica loaded up Netflix on the PS4 while plugged into an ultra high definition Samsung TV, and they only had standard HD content being listed with no HDR or 4K videos available. Same thing with Amazon Prime. But they plugged into NVIDIA Shield, which can output in 4K, and then it kicked into HDR mode. So what will happen is it's not so much a problem with the PS4, but a content provider like Netflix would have to output 1080p HDR instead of 4K HDR, or do both. And so far, nobody does. They either output 4K HDR or 1080p SDR.
Right.
Which is potentially a problem. So we don't really know what's going to happen with this, but at the same time, just like it would be stupid to buy a PC for HDR because there aren't really many computer monitors that can do that, and there aren't that many TVs. I think it'd be a stupid idea to buy a PS4 unless you already have an HDR television that's 4K. It's something to get excited about. But in that case, I'd probably still get the PS4 Pro if you don't own one already, just to guarantee it'll work with more things. But still, it's a little bit disappointing, especially because it's one of those things that's being used by people arguing on the internet. I kind of stay out of all the console wars stuff. I'm just on, the high PC mountain poking out of the fog. But Xbox owners and PS4 owners, the fanboys, are really going back and forth right now because the Xbox One S has HDR and can do 4K video streaming and ultra high definition Blu-rays. It's only $300, but it's so slow, and the PS4 Pro is so much faster. Everybody knows what a teraflop is now. They don't know anything else about it. They don't understand memory bandwidth limitations. They don't understand how slow an octa-core AMD CPU is, but everybody's an expert on teraflops. And
higher quality pixels.
Yeah, so, but that's a feature that's being bandied back and forth and argued about is HDR. And I mean, I'm just guessing, but 95% of people probably can't even take advantage of that. It's a nonsense feature.
Yeah.
It's a nonsense feature. So
it's going to be one of those things where in like a decade, when everything supports it, it'll be no longer a bullet point either, I guess. It's like talking about it now when no one can use it, because when everyone's going to be able to use it, it won't be exciting to talk about anymore.
Or it'll be like 3D, where it'll always be a niche product.
That could be it too.
But anyway. And then our last thing is a little bit of a sad one. No Man's Sky is currently averaging less than 1,000 concurrent users on Steam. That is down from their all-time peak of 212,000. Are you getting us a hardline? Can you get some hardline current server numbers?
I actually wanted to compare it. DayZ is in a pretty big slump right now because it's after the big new renderer update, but now it's like, okay, now for the content, right? Like the technical stuff's working well. DayZ, still in the last 30 days, is averaging about 4,400 players a day.
It's a shame. And it's probably not helped by things like Sean Murray's last tweet. We're totally focused on customer support right now. Then we'll move on to improving and adding features into the game. August 18th. It's been over a month and they haven't said anything. So, I'll just be the broken record. Don't pre-order games. I have to play pretty much everything for the Potato Masher, all the main AAA releases. If you're not sure, wait and ask me. Send us a message. Leave us a comment or something. I'll tell you. I don't care. It's not my money anyway.
That would be a great little mini series, Jeremiah. Like 10-second videos. Call it Germ Gaming's Game Shield Protection trademark. It's a 10-second video. It's crap. just like a super broad look at the game.
I'll adopt a new rating system. It's thumbs up or thumbs down. That's it. It's either an incredible or it's terrible.
It's just you only ask one question. Like, would you pay for this? Yeah.
Speaking of things we would play for, let's talk about things we've already paid for. And what are you playing this week? And what did you pay for?
Ooh,
this past week. It didn't work.
That transition. It was almost there.
I have a little bit of a perverse pleasure in making terrible transitions, like trying to make a leap of faith that's like across the Grand Canyon. I can do it. The thing is, you just start talking and you have to keep talking until you get to the connected dot. If you don't stop, you're not dumb.
You got to make it like what's his name? Was it Pert Hapley on Parks and Rec? Where it's just like, and now we're going to talk about the thing that we do occasionally on the podcast about the games. We're going to talk about the games that we are playing this week. Just super long transition for no reason.
Go for it, Dave. What you got?
You sure you don't want to go first? I got more games.
That's true. What am I going to talk about for 20 minutes this week? I have pretty much just been playing Uncharted 4. I'm actually in a little bit of a game slump where I don't really want to play much right now. Not because I'm not enjoying some games, but because I'm actually really enjoying making content right now. And the list of things I'm trying to get done before I go on vacation, like the list of game videos I want to have done, is pretty nuts. I have 3 uploaded right now that haven't gone live, and I should have 2 more done this weekend, and then another 3 next week of various different types. So, and some of those are easier, and some of them are more difficult, but I'm mostly just making content right now. But our roommates were out of town this week, so we hauled Hope's PS4 upstairs onto the big screen. We got on the regular big screen downstairs, we put it on the big screen, and we've been playing through a lot of Uncharted 4. And that game is impeccable. Did you play The Last of Us?
Yeah,
Story?
I loved it. It was fantastic.
Uncharted 4, I think, is that good. It isn't like tugging at the heartstrings quite so much, but if you've played the other Uncharted games and know the characters,
yeah,
I mean, the animations, the music, the cutscenes especially, it's so good. It's like,
I'm gonna play it right after the Mass Effect series. After
it, dude. It is exemplary. Like, there are so few games you can point to and go like, you guys are wizards. Like, honestly, in the last 2 years, it's been The Witcher 3 and Uncharted 4. Like, it's probably going to be
okay. Now, if you can relate this to Geralt of Rivia, we can talk.
Well, it's not an open world RPG. That's the thing. So
is there a book series I could read for like 2 years?
Not really. But on a per square foot basis, the polish is ridiculous. All the tiny little animations, like that can totally miss. You'll totally miss them until you see them. But the characters, like, it's just impeccable. Everything about it is impeccable, and I'm enjoying it so much. It's so good. I wish it ran at 60 FPS. And actually, upstairs was the first time I was playing it on an 120-inch screen, and I was like, this could be higher resolution. It would be okay. This is a little soft. Watching movies, you don't notice it, but playing games, like, it's a little soft. Especially games that are going for like a lifelike feel. But Dave, just from a graphics horror standpoint, you would love this game. Sunlight, if it's sunshine, wow. Sunlight, if it's coming through a window, you'll see veins highlighted in people's ears, like where the sunlight's going through them, and light refracts off the insides of their pupils.
Yeah, it's called subsurface scattering.
Right, but this game is doing way more of it than pretty much anything else. I would go out on a limb to say Rise of the Tomb Raider, I think, is the best looking game I've ever played. On a like per pixel, the quality in that game is ridiculous. On a polish level and on the little details mattering level, Uncharted 4 might be the best. Just every little thing.
Can someone please do a Photoshop of NVIDIA Sunshine works? I want to know what could that possibly be? Like, somebody just like total marketing BS. Like, the light comes from a real sun rendered inside of the game world, but in space.
We're adding it to Arma.
NVIDIA, it's sunshine.
That's all we need. Oh man, if they add GameWorks to Arma, it's all over.
Again, they're already using like 3 different NVIDIA modules in the game for stuff, so
they might as well add Intel CPU works to it, because if you don't have an Intel CPU, you know works.
Yeah, basically.
But that's really all I've been playing.
As far as Uncharted goes, I've actually read a couple of the technical articles, spoiler free, just about like a certain section of the game, how they did it, because it is pretty awesome. I mean, it's a more linear game, so they can go all out to make it just ridiculous, which is awesome. I love all those kind of articles anyway. It's my kind of thing. For what I am playing this week, new stuff, actually. But first, some old stuff. I've gone back, wiped out my City Skylines mod collection, and I've launched it a few times and watched some lunch breaks disappear into the abyss. So, yep, it's still really good. And Jeremiah, they have improved a lot in the base game. Like, I have some nice mods I'm still using, but there's like terrain tools and stuff in the base game. And you know how you used to be able to get the mods to like sculpt rivers and mountains like, actually in your city map?
Mm-hmm.
Not only are those tools in game now, when you hit them, it instantly creates a topographical 3D map of your city, of the terrain. It looks so cool. I mean, all kinds of new stuff, even without the expansion packs too. So City Skyline, still fantastic.
I need to get back into that.
Been playing some Caustics 3, and while the lack of fast forward button might drive me to actual insanity, the graphics are beautiful, and it's just the most old school like RPG Age of Empires experience. I'm actually worried about you, Jeremiah. I feel like you're gonna launch it and not care about the lack of fast forward and just get lost.
I mean, you know how much I like Age of Empires.
This is Age of Empires like Ukrainian edition. Like it's the Eastern European version of Age of Empires 2. It's locked to a 2D camera like perspective, but the whole game's in 3D. So like all the units and all are 3D, and they move around in 3D. But like your camera is that classic isometric look, and the trees have like the painterly style to them, and it's really cool.
Nice.
And also, you guys might have heard Joel's wail of despair last Friday as he was getting ready to head out to his Florida vacation, and they launched the Star Wars Battlefront Death Star trailer, and at the end it said, going live on Tuesday, and he went, no, it can't be, I wasn't ready! I've played a couple hours of that. If you like Battlefront, it's definitely the largest and best expansion pack. It's got 5 maps in total, but what's cool is, I mean, DLCs are themed, obviously, but this one is like a linear sequential theme for the maps. So it's like you start out with a space battle, and then you go like inside of the Star Destroyer, and it's 5 maps in total, but then it ends with like the trench run on the surface of the Death Star. And how it works is it'll pick like a certain number of your team in your fighters to be like selected for the trench run, and you get lined up, and then the Empire gets like their like trench defenders, but the whole time the rest of your team is still fighting all around you on the like surface of the Death Star. And the first time that you spawn into that map, Jeremiah, and you look across the surface of the Death Star, and all of like the turbo lasers are firing, they actually have the curvature like on the horizon as it goes around, like kind of like where you're not quite out of a planet's atmosphere, you can just barely see the curve. It feels like the sense of scale and all is just fantastic. And of course the sound effects and everything else. They also have a new mode where you actually fight in that sequential series of maps and actually go inside of the Star Destroyer for like the next map, and you fight over the reactor and all that stuff, which is a really cool addition to the game. Tons of fun so far. And also the first time that I've really seen the frame rate struggle in Battlefront. DICE crammed this DLC full of new features. I hope they actually patch it a bit, because the space battles can drop into like the, I don't say like low 20s pretty frequently. It gets pretty intense, but tons and tons of fun. I am not regretting that season pass purchase. It's been awesome.
Wait. It's now mail time. Now, we did have an excellent question come in from Locke Gamer. So Locke, we are going to answer your question, but we're not going to do it on the podcast. I thought it was such a good topic, but it was one that was great for Joel too. Mm-hmm. And we're going to wait till Joel is back from vacation, and we're going to do a casual conversation about it. So Dave, you're welcome to hop in if you want. I'll forward you the email later. Okay. Or it's just going to be me and Joel, but it should be a lot of fun. But we did have a quick tech question because Joel's not here to complain. It's from Lewis. Super quick question, I think, as a broad application. He says, hey, Jeremiah and Dave, I just built my first gaming PC back in May. I'm slowly acquiring parts and looking out for deals and bundles. And now I'm wondering, what should I upgrade next to get a really good 1080p experience in most games? So he has an i3-6100 Skylake dual core, 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gig solid state hard drive, terabyte internal hard drive, and a Radeon R9 380.
Okay.
And he says he wants a good 1080p experience in most games. Should he get an i5-6600K or an RX 480 or a GTX 1060? I'm wondering if I should bite the bullet and get an i5 but not get an instant bump in performance, or get a new GPU, get a nice bump in performance, but still be bottlenecked by my CPU. Thanks, to keep up the good work, Lewis.
And what was the CPU again?
An i3-6100.
Is that hyper-threaded or is it just single?
Yeah. Oh, no, it's hyper-threaded. Yeah. Stock, it actually performs about the same as a stock 2500K in games. in games. So it's not the new Skylake CPUs, like they're good. They're seriously good.
Oh, sure. But I think GPU is where it's at for this upgrade. What do you think?
Absolutely. Because even if that CPU does bottleneck you a little bit, if you upgrade to an i5, it's not going to be that much of a difference now. And I think we were talking about this in the latest tech podcast, which I need to get out to everybody. It's uploaded and rendered. I just got to do all the time code stuff. But if you wait a couple years, your socket will still be good. Intel's not going to put out more stuff on your socket after a little while because they abandoned them. But you'll be able to go on eBay and grab an i5 6600K for $50 in a few years or $100 in a few years and toss it in there when the CPU is actually holding you back. But you'll get a lot more right now out of getting a better GPU. An R9 380 is not a bad GPU at all, but you could get an R9 or an RX 480 or a GTX 1060 would be an excellent upgrade.
Yes.
Especially for 1080p, they would crush at 1080p. So that's absolutely what I would do.
Speaking of current gen graphics cards, have you been seeing the first laptop reviews hitting for the new gen of graphics cards? Oh man, this is the biggest leap in graphics cards since unified shaders, right? Like when they stopped doing texture shaders and polygon shaders, and it made it all unified.
Wasn't that first generation like the 8800 GT? Or the 7900 GT?
This is the biggest leap in laptops and graphics cards in 9-ish years.
For anybody who's not familiar with it, basically modern GPUs, specifically NVIDIA's modern GPUs, they're on a smaller, they've done die shrinks and everything else. Just the architecture's got continuous improvements, and now they use little enough power, they can put the desktop version of the graphics card into a laptop. Instead of cutting it down by 50%, and just completely nerfing it and calling it the M version, it's the actual desktop version. So if you buy a laptop with a GTX 1060, it's a GTX 1060. Now, you probably can't overclock it as far and all that stuff. There are limits, but the ability to get it... Yeah, go ahead.
Just today, PC Gamer was testing a laptop with a 1060, not a 1060M, a 1060. And what they do is it's underclocked, but it has actually more cores on the laptop version to make up for it. That way it uses less power. They said that in a fight with a desktop with a 1060, it was within 10% of the desktop's performance in games. 10%. That is nuts for a laptop.
So for the first time, the question of I'm going to school, I want a laptop for work and gaming or whatever, I still think a desktop is better, but for the first time, you could say if you could only get a laptop, you could do it. If you only wanted a laptop, you could actually have a really good gaming experience probably for a few years on that laptop. Because, CPUs and RAM, they can last much longer than your GPU can if you're trying to stay relevant. But that's awesome. So I guess congratulations to NVIDIA, AMD, work on getting that power down.
Guess so.
AMD's, they're doing a good job, but they still have their bad reputation because they're still behind NVIDIA by 15-20%, but they're getting under 200 watts for a significant portion of their cards, which is cool. I mean, modern AMD stuff uses less power than my 980 Ti. I'm pretty sure the TDP is lower. So, and my card's not old. I bought it a year, 15 months ago, something like that. So
yeah.
Anyway, I think that's the podcast. Dave, is that the podcast? Does that sound like the podcast to you?
I'm saying that's the podcast.
That's the podcast. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. As always, you can write into casualshenanigans@gmail.com to be a part of the show, or tweet at casualshenaniga. You visit our website, casualshenanigans.com, and you can also find us on Facebook, YouTube, everything else like that. I'll say, because sometime in the next couple episodes, I've got a couple Potato Masher videos actually I'm going to want to play on the podcast. We stopped doing those quite so often because they were happening so often. It was taking up valuable podcast time. But I'm about ready to introduce one or two of those. Dave, do you have anything you want to promote on your channel?
Joel and I are doing a Gwent series.
Yes.
So watch out for that.
Live action Gwent series.
I literally made us a Gwent trophy, which is currently standing proud over my desk at work because Joel is behind the tournament by 2 games. It's 14-12 right now. And so he had to go on vacation knowing that the entire time he was gone, that trophy would be at my desk instead of his. But we're doing a live action Gwent series, and we're going to be doing some more of those very soon in the run up to the standalone games launch next month.
Nice. All right, guys, thank you for coming out. Thank you for being a part of the show. We love you all, and we'll see you next week. But until then, go check out other stuff on the channel like Casual Shenanigans Tech and the Casual Conversations. and stay.